Katie moved through the maintenance tunnels like a shadow given form. This time, she was not just observing the facility and its occupants. She was hunting them. Her first target was the power distribution center on level 2. She had identified it during her reconnaissance as a critical weakness in the Separatist defenses. The facility's lighting, communications, and security systems all depended on the main power grid dot. She reached the access panel and carefully removed the cover. Inside, a maze of cables and circuit boards controlled the flow of electricity throughout the complex. Katie selected a specific circuit that controlled the lighting in the guard quarters and made a precise cut. The lights in that section went out immediately, dot through the ventilation system. She could hear confused voices as guards tried to figure out what had happened. They assumed it was a simple equipment failure and sent a maintenance team to investigate. Katie smiled to herself. As she moved to her next target, over the next hour, she systematically disabled different sections of the power grid. Each failure seemed random and unconnected, but together they created a growing sense of unease among the Separatists. Equipment was malfunctioning, lights were flickering, and the guards were starting to look over their shoulders. Team 7. This is Katie, she whispered into her communicator. Phase 1 complete. Beginning Phase 2. Phase 2 involved the communication system. Katie made her way to the main relay station and carefully sabotaged several key components. She did not destroy the system entirely, but instead created intermittent failures that would make it unreliable at critical moments. As she worked, she could hear the frustration in the guards' voices as they tried to report the various malfunctions to their commanders. Their messages were being garbled or cut off entirely, making it impossible to maintain proper coordination. Something is wrong with the communications, she heard one guard say. I cannot reach Commander Jackster. The power systems are failing too, another replied. This place is falling apart. Katie moved to her next objective, the first guard. She had studied his patrol pattern during her reconnaissance and knew exactly when he would be alone and vulnerable. She waited in the darkness above a maintenance corridor, as patient as a spider in its web. The guard appeared right on schedule, walking his route with the bored confidence of someone who had done the same thing dozens of times. He never looked up, never considered that danger might come from above. Katie dropped silently behind him and struck with surgical precision. The guard collapsed without making a sound. Katie dragged his unconscious body into a maintenance closet and took his weapon and communication device. Then she disappeared back into the tunnels, leaving no trace of what had happened. When the guard failed to report in, his partner came looking for him. But all he found was an empty corridor and a growing sense of dread. The guard's weapon was missing, his communicator was gone, and there was no sign of a struggle. Base, this is Patrol 7, the remaining guard said into his radio. Jensen is missing. I repeat, Jensen is missing. But the communication system had been sabotaged, and his message was lost in static. The guard found himself alone in the dark corridor, wondering what had happened to his partner, and whether it might happen to him too. Katie struck again 20 minutes later. Another guard, another silent takedown, another disappearance that left the Separatists more confused and frightened. She was picking them off, one by one, using their own patrol patterns against Vendat. By the time she had eliminated her fourth target, panic was beginning to spread through the facility. The guards were no longer following their assigned routes. They were grouping together for safety, abandoning their posts to stay with their comrades. Team 7, this is Katie, she reported. The enemy is starting to break down. They are abandoning their defensive positions. Captain Isafik's voice crackled back through the communicator. Understood. How many hostiles have you neutralized? 4. Down, approximately 40 remaining, Katie replied. But their morale is collapsing. They are more afraid of each other than they are of us. She was right. The Separatists were beginning to turn on each other, suspecting betrayal and sabotage from within their own ranks. Some guards accused others of being coalition spies. Others believed that the facility itself was haunted by the ghosts of dead. Miners, Commander Jackster tried to restore order, but his communication system was unreliable and his power grid was failing. He could not coordinate his defenses effectively, and his guards were becoming increasingly unreliable. All units, maintain your positions. He ordered over the failing radio system. We are dealing with equipment failures, nothing more. But his words rang hollow. Too many things were going wrong at once for it to be simple equipment failure. Something was hunting them in the darkness, picking them off one by one, and no one knew what it was. Katie continued her systematic elimination of key targets. She focused on the guards who seemed most confident, the ones who other Separatists looked to for leadership. Each disappearance weakened the group's cohesion and spread fear through their ranks. She also began psychological warfare in earnest. Using the facility's intercom system, she played recordings of the guards she had eliminated, their voices echoing through the corridors like ghostly warnings. She manipulated the lighting to create moving shadows that made the remaining guards jump at their own reflections. "What is happening to us?" one guard whispered to his companion. "People are disappearing, the systems are failing, and no one knows why." "Maybe the Coalition has some kind of new weapon," the other replied. "Something we have never seen before." They were closer to the truth than they realized. Humans were indeed a new kind of weapon, one that the galaxy was not prepared for. Katie represented the ultimate evolution of Earth's most dangerous predator, a creature that could think, plan, and adapt faster than its prey could react. As the night wore on, the number of functional guards continued to decrease. Katie had eliminated 12 of them without firing a single shot or triggering any alarms. The remaining Separatists were huddled together in small groups, afraid to venture out alone. "Team 7, this is Katie," she reported. "I am ready for a final phase." The final phase involved Commander Jackster himself. Katie had been saving him for last, waiting until his forces were weakened and demoralized. Now it was time to end the siege once and for all. She made her way through the tunnels to the command center where Jackster had established his headquarters. The commander was surrounded by his remaining guards, but they were nervous and jumpy. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every sound might be the approach of death. Katie studied the scene from above, planning her approach carefully. Jackster was a dangerous opponent, but he was also frightened and confused. His confidence had been shattered by the night's events, and he was no longer thinking clearly. She dropped through a ceiling panel directly into the command center, landing silently behind the group of guards. For a moment, no one noticed her presence. She was so small and quiet that she might have been invisible. Then one of the guards turned around and saw her. His eyes widened in shock and fear as he tried to understand what he was looking at. A tiny human female, covered in shadows and armed with weapons that seemed too large for her frame. "What are you?" The guard whispered. Katie looked up at him with cold green eyes that reflected no mercy or hesitation. "I am human," she said simply. Words sent a chill through the room. Suddenly, all the strange events of the night made sense. The disappearances, the sabotage, the systematic destruction of their defenses. It had all been the work of this small, seemingly harmless creature. Commander Jackster raised his weapon, but Katie was already moving. She flowed between the guards, like water, striking with precision and deadly efficiency. Her movements were too fast and too unpredictable for the larger, slower Separatists to follow. Within seconds, it was over. Commander Jackster found himself alone with the small human, who had destroyed his entire operation. His weapon was gone, his guards were down, and he was face to face with something that defied everything he thought he knew about combat. "The hostages will be released immediately," Katie said in a voice that carried absolute authority despite its quiet tone. Jackster looked into her eyes and saw death waiting patiently for his answer. He activated his communicator with shaking hands and gave the order to release the civilian workers. "Team 7, this is Katie," she reported calmly. "Mission accomplished. The facility is secure, and the hostages are free." Captain Sksothic's voice came back filled with amazement. "Confirmed. We can see the hostages emerging from the main entrance." "How did you—" "I will explain later," Katie interrupted. "Right now, I need a pickup." As she waited for her team to arrive, Katie looked around. The command center at the defeated separatists. They stared at her with a mixture of fear and awe, unable to comprehend how someone so small had accomplished what an entire army could not. When her teammates finally reached the facility, they found Katie sitting quietly in the command center, her weapons secured and her equipment neatly organized. She looked exactly like the quiet young woman who had joined their unit, but they would never see her the same way again. How? Was all Fulmer could manage to say. Katie stood up and shouldered her pack. "I told you. Humans are good at hunt." Dr. Linda Hayes stood alone in the cold lab. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. She looked at the strange creatures in the glass tanks. They were ugly things with hard shells and many legs. The humans called them Zentari. Linda touched the small device behind her ear. It was a translator that helped her understand alien languages. But today, something felt different. The device was making sounds she had never heard before. It buzzed and clicked in her head like a broken radio. She walked closer to the first tank. Inside was a small Zentari soldier. Its body was like black glass, and its eyes glowed red. Linda had studied these creatures for months, but she could never understand them. The translator only picked up random words and sounds. But now, as she stood near the tank, Linda felt something strange. She could sense fear coming from the creature. Not just any fear, but deep terror. The Zentari was afraid of something, and Linda could feel it like a cold wind in her mind. "That's impossible," Linda said to herself. The translator was not supposed to read emotions. It was only meant to change words from one language to another. She moved to the next tank. This one held a larger Zentari with broken wings. Linda placed her hand on the glass. The feeling hit her like a wave. Pain, sadness, and something else. The creature was thinking about home, about a place far away, and it was gone forever. Linda stepped back. Her heart was beating fast. She had worked with aliens for 5 years, but she had never felt anything like this. The translator was doing something new, something that scared her. She walked to her desk and picked up her notes. The war with the Zentari had been going on for 3 years. The humans were losing badly. Every month, another colony was destroyed. The Zentari ships were faster and stronger than anything humans had built. Captain Jake Morrison had brought these creatures to her lab after the last battle. He wanted Linda to learn about their technology, their weapons, their plans. But the Zentari never talked. They just sat in their tanks and waited. Linda looked at the communication device on her desk. It was a black box with crystal parts that the humans had taken from a Zentari ship. She had been trying to understand it for weeks, but it never worked. She picked up the device and held it in her hands. The moment she touched it, her translator began to buzz loudly. Linda almost dropped the device, but then she heard something amazing. Voices. Dozens of Zentari voices speaking all at once. "Sector 7 is clear," one voice said. "No human ships detected." "Food supplies are running low," said another. "We need to find more soon. The Devourers are getting closer. said a third voice, full of fear. We don't have much time. Linda's hands shook. She was hearing live Centauri communications. But how was this possible? The device was not connected to anything. It should not work in her lab. She listened more carefully. The voices were talking about troop movements, supply lines, and battle plans. But they were also talking about something else, something called the Devourers that made them very afraid. Who are the Devourers? Linda whispered to herself, as if answering her question. The device began to show her images. Linda saw them in her mind like a movie. Dark ships that looked like giant insects, creatures made of metal and wires, planets that were empty and dead, stripped of all life. The images made Linda sick. She put the device down and rubbed her eyes. When she looked up, she saw that all the Centauri in the tanks were looking at her. Their red eyes were wide with surprise. One of the creatures began to make clicking sounds. Linda's translator turned the sounds into words. You can hear us, the Centauri said. How is this possible? Linda walked slowly to the tank. I don't know, she said. But I can understand you now. The Centauri's body flashed different colors. Linda felt its emotions change from surprise to hope to fear. You must listen, the creature said. We are not your real enemy. There is something much worse coming. What do you mean? Linda asked. The Devourers, the Centauri said. They destroyed our world. They eat everything. We only fight you because we need food to survive. But they are following us. They will be here soon. Linda felt the truth of these words. The Centauri was not lying. She could feel its desperation, its sadness for its lost home. These creatures were not evil invaders. They were refugees running from something terrible. How long do we have? Linda asked. Months, maybe less, the Centauri said. When they come, they will destroy everything. Humans, Centauri, all life in this sector of space. Linda's mind raced. She had to tell Captain Morrison about this. But would he believe her? The humans and Centauri had been fighting for so long. There was so much hate and anger between them. She looked at the other creatures in the tanks. Now she could feel all of their emotions. Fear, sadness, hope, and something else. They were all thinking the same thing. They wanted to go home, but home was gone forever. What are your names? Linda asked. The first creature seemed surprised by the question. I am called Kekstar, it said. I was a farmer before the war. I am Nexral, said another. I taught children. One by one, the creatures told Linda their names and their stories. They were not monsters. They were people, just like humans, who had lost everything and were trying to survive. Linda sat down at her desk and began to write. She had to record everything she had learned. The translator was changing, becoming something new. It was not just changing words anymore. It was helping her understand the thoughts and feelings of other creatures. As she wrote, Linda realized that her life would never be the same. She had always been a quiet scientist who studied aliens from a distance. But now she was connected to them in a way she had never imagined. The device on her desk began to buzz again. More voices were coming through. Linda listened carefully. The Centauri were talking about their plans, their fears, their hopes. They were planning another attack on a human colony, but Linda could feel that they hated doing it. We have no choice, one voice said. If we don't take their food, we will all die. Perhaps there is another way, said another voice. Maybe. We can talk to them? Talk to humans? The first voice was full of doubt. They will never listen to us. They think we are monsters. Linda stood up. Maybe she could change that. Maybe she could be the bridge between the two species. But first, she had to convince Captain Morrison to listen to her. She looked at the Centauri in the tanks one more time. They were watching her with their glowing red eyes. Linda could feel their hope, their desperate wish for peace. "I will try to help you," she said. "Why?" asked Kekstar. "We are your enemies." Linda thought for a moment. "Because you are not really our enemies," she said. "You are just afraid, like us." The Zentari's body flashed bright colors. Linda felt its gratitude like warm sunshine. For the first time in 3 years of war, there was hope. Captain Jake Morrison did not believe Linda at first. He stood in her lab with his arms crossed, looking at the Zentari in the tanks. His face was hard and angry. "You're telling me these things can talk?" he said. "That they're not really trying to kill us?" Linda nodded. "They're running from something worse. Something called the Devourers. They only attack our colonies because they need food to survive." Jake laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Linda, these creatures have killed millions of people. They destroyed New Earth, Paradise Station, and dozens of other colonies. You want me to believe they're the good guys?" "Not good guys," Linda said. "Just scared people trying to survive." Linda walked to Kekstar's tank. The Zentari farmer looked at Captain Morrison with its red eyes. Linda put her hand on the glass. "Tell him," Linda said to Kekstar. The creature began to make clicking sounds. Linda's translator turned the sounds into words. "We are sorry for the pain we have caused," Kekstar said. "We never wanted to hurt anyone. But when the Devourers came to our world, we had to choose between being killers or being dead." Jake's face changed. He had heard the translation through Linda's device. "It's just a trick," he said. "They're trying to make us feel sorry for them." Linda felt Kekstar emotions. The creature was telling the truth. "It's not a trick, Jake. I can feel what they feel. They're desperate and afraid." "Even if that's true," Jake said, "Admiral Brooks will never agree to work with them. Too many people have died." Linda knew Jake was right. Admiral Helen Brooks had lost her own son in the first Zentari attack. She would never trust them. But Linda also knew that the Devourers were coming, and neither humans nor Zentari could stop them alone. "What if I could prove it?" Linda said. "What if I could show the Admiral that the Zentari are telling the truth?" Jake looked at her for a long time. "How?" "Let me talk to their leader," Linda said. "A real conversation, not through prisoners. Let me show them that we can understand each other." Jake shook his head. "That's impossible. The moment a Zentari ship comes near us, both sides start shooting. Then we have to find another way," Linda said. The next day, Linda worked with Commander Steve Parker, the ship's tactical officer. Steve was young and smart, and he understood technology better than anyone else on the ship. Linda explained her idea to him. "You want to send a message to the Zentari fleet?" Steve said. "Using their own communication system?" "Yes," Linda said, "but not just words. I want to send emotions, feelings. I want them to know that we understand them." Steve looked at the Zentari device on Linda's desk. "That thing is alien technology. We don't really know how it works." "I know how it works," Linda said. "At least I think I do. When I touch it, I can feel the network. It's like a giant mind that connects all the Zentari together." Steve was quiet for a moment. "If we do this, and Admiral Brooks finds out, we'll both be in trouble." "If we don't do this," Linda said, "we'll all be dead when the Devourers come." That night, Linda and Steve worked together to boost the power of the Zentari communication device. Steve connected it to the ship's power systems, while Linda used her translator to tune into the Zentari network. At first, there was only noise. Hundreds of Zentari voices talking at once. Linda had to focus very hard to sort through them all. Finally, she found what she was looking for. A strong, clear voice that seemed to be giving orders to the others. "Are you the leader?" Linda asked through the device. The voice stopped talking. For a moment, there was silence. Then the voice spoke. Again, but this time it was speaking to Linda directly. "Who are you?" the voice asked. "How can you speak to us?" "I am Dr. Linda Hayes," Linda said. "I am a human scientist. I have learned to understand your language." "This is impossible," the voice said. "No human has ever spoken to us before." Linda felt the creature's surprise and fear. "I have some of your people here," she said. "They told me about the Devourers. They told me that you are not our real enemy." The voice was quiet for a long time. Then it said, "I am Captain Zextar of the Zentari fleet. What do you want from us?" Linda took a deep breath. "I want to help you, and I want you to help us. The Devourers are coming for both of us. We need to work together to survive." "Work together?" Zextar's voice was full of doubt. "Your people hate us. They kill us whenever they see us." "Because they don't understand," Linda said. "They think you want to destroy us. But I know the truth. You're just trying to survive." Linda felt Zextar's emotions through the device. The Zentari captain was tired of fighting. She had lost many friends in the war. She wanted peace, but she didn't believe it was possible. "Even if I wanted to trust you," Zextar said, "my people would never agree. We have been hurt too much." "Then let me prove it to you," Linda said. "Let me show you that some humans can understand." Linda did something she had never done before. Instead of just sending words through the device, she sent her own emotions. She shared her sadness about the war, her fear of the Devourers, and her hope that the two species could work together. The effect was immediate. Linda felt Zextar's shock as the human emotions flowed through the Zentari network. For the first time, a Zentari was experiencing human feelings directly. "How did you do that?" Zextar asked. "I don't know," Linda said. "But I can feel what you feel too. You're afraid, just like we are. You miss your home. You want the fighting to stop." Zextar was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You really can understand us." "Yes," Linda said. "And I want to help you. What do you want me to do?" Zextar asked. "Meet with us," Linda said. "Let me arrange a meeting between your leaders and ours. Let me show them that we can work together." "Your Admiral Brooks will never agree to this," Zextar said. "Let me worry about Admiral Brooks," Linda said. The next morning, Linda went to see Admiral Brooks. The Admiral was a tough woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She had been fighting the Zentari for 3 years, and she hated them. "You want to." "Do what?" Admiral Brooks said when Linda explained her plan. "I want to arrange a meeting," Linda said. "A peaceful meeting between our leaders and theirs." Admiral Brooks stood up from her desk. "Dr. Hayes, those creatures have killed millions of our people. They are not going to suddenly become our friends." "They're not our friends," Linda said. "But they're not our real enemies either. The real enemy is coming, and it's much worse than the Zentari." Linda told Admiral Brooks about the Devourers. She explained how they had destroyed the Zentari homeworld, and how they were now heading toward human space. She showed the Admiral the images she had seen through the Zentari device. Admiral Brooks looked at the images for a long time. Her face was pale. "Even if this is true," she said, "how do we know we can trust them?" "Because I can feel their emotions," Linda said. "I know when they're lying and when they're telling the truth. They're desperate, Admiral. They need our help as much as we need theirs." Admiral Brooks walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "If I agree to this meeting, and it's a trap, thousands of people will die." "If we don't try," Linda said, "everyone will die when the Devourers come." Admiral Brooks turned back to Linda. "You really believe you can make this work?" "I have to try," Linda said. The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. "One meeting. But it has to be on neutral ground. and I want a full military escort. Linda smiled. Thank you, Admiral. That night, Linda contacted Captain Zextar again. She told the Zentari captain about Admiral Brooks' agreement to meet. Your admiral is brave, Zextar said. But my people are still afraid. They think this is a trap. Then we have to show them it's not, Linda said. We have to prove that peace is possible. Linda spent the next week preparing for the meeting. She worked with Commander Parker to set up a secure communication system. She practiced using her translator to help both sides understand each other. The meeting was set for the following week on a small station in neutral space. Linda would be there to translate between the two sides. She knew it would be dangerous, but she also knew it was the only way to save both species from the DEVOURERS. As she prepared for the meeting, Linda felt hopeful for the first time in months. She had found a way to bridge the gap between humans and Zentari. Now she just had to convince both sides to trust each other enough to work together. The future of both species depended on it. The meeting took place on Freedom Station, a small trading post in neutral space. Linda arrived with Admiral Brooks, Captain Morrison, and Commander Parker. The humans wore their best uniforms, but Linda could feel their nervousness. Captain Zextar came with 3 other Zentari leaders. They moved like dancers, their crystal bodies flashing different colors. Linda's translator was working hard to keep up with all the emotions in the room. So these are the creatures that have been killing our people, Admiral Brooks said quietly. Linda felt the Admiral's anger and hate. She also felt the Zentari's fear and suspicion. This was going to be harder than she thought. Remember, Linda said to Admiral Brooks, they're just as afraid as we are. The meeting started badly. Admiral Brooks began by listing all the human colonies the Zentari had destroyed. Captain Zextar responded by talking about the Zentari ships that humans had blown up. Both sides were angry, and Linda could feel their emotions like a storm in her head. This is not working. Commander Parker whispered to Linda. Linda stood up. Stop, she said loudly. This is exactly what the Devourers want. They want us to fight each other, or they get ready to destroy us all. She used her translator to share her emotions with both sides. She showed them her fear of the Devourers, her sadness about the war, and her hope for peace. The room became quiet. Dr. Hayes is right, Captain Zextar said. We have been fighting the wrong enemy. Admiral Brooks looked at the Zentari captain. How do we know you're not lying about these Devourers? Zextar's body flashed bright colors. Linda felt the captain's pain and fear. Because I have seen them, Zextar said. They came to our world like a plague. They ate our cities, our forests, our people. Everything we built over thousands of years was gone in a few days. Linda translated not just the words, but the emotions behind them. Admiral Brooks felt the Zentari's terror and sadness. Her face softened. Show us, Admiral Brooks said. Zextar touched a crystal device on the table. Images appeared in the air. Above it, Linda saw the Zentari homeworld as it used to be. Beautiful crystal cities, green forests, and peaceful farms. Then she saw the Devourers arrive. The machines were huge, like metal mountains with thousands of arms. They landed on the planet and began to eat everything. Buildings, trees, animals, and people all disappeared into their metal mouths. The Zentari fought back, but their weapons had no effect. We had to choose, Zextar said. Stay and die, or run and become raiders. We chose to live. Admiral Brooks watched the images with wide eyes. How many of these things are there? Millions, Zextar said. They move from system to system, eating everything they find. They are heading this way now. Linda felt the terror in the room. Both humans and Zentari were scared of the same thing. This was her chance to bring them together. We can't fight them alone, Linda said, but maybe we can fight them together. The meeting continued for hours. Linda translated between the two sides, sharing not just words but feelings. Slowly, humans and Zentari began to understand each other. Admiral Brooks learned that the Zentari had families, just like humans. They had children they wanted to protect. They had homes they missed. They were not monsters, just people trying to survive. The Zentari learned that humans were not all killers. They had built beautiful cities and created art and music. They took care of their weak and old. They were not so different from the Zentari. By the end of the meeting, both sides had agreed to work together. It would not be easy, but it was their only hope. "We will need to combine our technologies," Admiral Brooks said. "Your bioships and our metal ships working together. Our people will not like this," Sextar said. "They have too much hate." "Then we have to change their minds," Linda said. "I can help with that." Over the next few weeks, Linda became the bridge between the two species. She traveled between human and Zentari ships, helping them understand each other. Her translator was getting stronger, and she could now communicate with larger groups at once. Colonel Dan Wright, the human fleet's chief engineer, worked with Zentari technicians to combine their technologies. The humans had strong metal ships and powerful weapons. The Zentari had living ships that could repair themselves and grow new parts. "This is amazing," Colonel Wright said as he watched a Zentari bioship heal a hole in its side. "How do they do this?" Linda translated the Zentari engineer's explanation. "They say their ships are alive. They can feel pain and heal themselves like animals." "Can we do that with our ships?" Colonel Wright asked. "Maybe," Linda said, "but we need to learn their language first." Linda spent days teaching human engineers how to communicate with Zentari bioships. It was hard work because the ships thought in pictures and emotions, not words. But slowly, the humans began to understand. The first joint mission was a disaster. A group of human pilots tried to fly with Zentari bioships, but they could not work together. The humans flew in straight lines, while the Zentari moved like birds. They crashed into each other and almost started fighting. Linda had to use her translator to calm everyone down. She realized that the two species had to learn to think like each other. "You have to feel the ship," Linda told the human pilots. "Don't just fly it, become part of it." "That's impossible," one pilot said. "Ships are machines." "Not anymore," Linda said. "These ships are alive. They want to help you, but you have to trust them." It took weeks of practice, but eventually, humans and Zentari began to work together. Linda was always there to translate, not just words, but feelings and ideas. Lieutenant Amy Foster, a young communications officer, became Linda's assistant. Amy was good with languages and had a kind heart. Linda began training her to use a modified translator. "It hurts at first," Linda warned Amy as they prepared the device. "Your brain has to learn to process alien thoughts." Amy nodded bravely. "I understand. We need more people who can do what you do." The first time Amy used the translator, she screamed. The alien thoughts were too strange and painful. But she did not give up. Every day she practiced until she could handle simple conversations with the Zentari. "I can feel what they feel," Amy said excitedly after her first successful translation. "It's like being inside their minds." Linda smiled. "Now you know why this work is so important." As the weeks passed, the combined fleet grew stronger. Human soldiers learned to fight alongside Zentari warriors. Engineers from both species worked together to build new weapons and ships. Doctors shared knowledge about healing and medicine. But Linda knew their time was running out. The Zentari scouts reported that the Devourers were getting closer. They had already consumed 3-star systems and were moving toward human space. "How much time do we have?" Admiral Brooks asked during a strategy meeting. 2 months, maybe. Less, Captain Zextar said. They move faster than we thought. Linda felt the fear in the room. Even working together, the combined fleet was small compared to the Devourer swarm. They needed a better plan. We can't fight them with force, Linda said. The Zentari already tried that. We need to find their weakness. What weakness? Commander Parker asked. They're machines. They don't get tired or scared. Linda thought about this. Through her translator, she had learned that the Devourers were controlled by a single intelligence. They all thought the same thoughts and followed the same plans. That's it, Linda said suddenly. They're too perfect. They all think exactly alike. What do you mean? Admiral Brooks asked. They can't handle chaos, Linda said. They expect everyone to act logically. But what if we don't? What if we act completely randomly? Captain Zextar's body flashed bright colors. You want to confuse them? More than that, Linda said. I want to overload their minds with chaos. Make them so confused they can't think straight. The plan was risky, but it was their only hope. Linda would use her translator to coordinate the entire fleet. Instead of fighting in formation, they would attack randomly. Human ships would dive and spin, while Zentari bioships would dance and weave. Nothing would be predictable. But how will we coordinate without a plan? Colonel Wright asked. Through me, Linda said. I'll be the center of the chaos. I'll make sure everyone knows what to do without the Devourers being able to predict it. Linda spent the next few weeks preparing. She connected her translator to the communication systems of both fleets. She practiced coordinating thousands of ships at once. It was exhausting work, but she knew it was their only chance. Amy helped her by handling the smaller groups while Linda focused on the big picture. Together, they became the communication center for the entire combined fleet. Are you ready? Admiral Brooks asked as the scouts reported that the Devourers had entered the system. Linda looked at the screens showing thousands of human and Zentari ships working together. A month ago, they had been enemies. Now they were united against a common threat. As ready as we can be, Linda said. The battle for the future of both species was about to begin. 3 months after the battle, Linda stood in the observation deck of the new space station called Unity. Through the large windows, she could see ships from both species working together. Human metal ships flew alongside Zentari bioships like old friends. The station itself was a marvel of cooperation. Half of it was built with human steel and electronics. The other half was grown from Zentari biomaterials. The two halves were connected by a beautiful garden where both species could meet and work together. It's amazing what we can build when we're not trying to kill each other, Captain Morrison said as he joined Linda at the window. Linda smiled. Jake had been promoted to admiral after the battle. He was now in charge of the joint fleet that protected both human and Zentari space. How are the colonies doing? Linda asked. Better than expected, Jake said. The first mixed settlement on New Hope is actually ahead of schedule. Turns out human farming techniques work really well with Zentari bioships. Linda nodded. She had been traveling between the new colonies, helping humans and Zentari learn to live together. It was not always easy. Both species had to overcome years of hate and fear, but slowly they were succeeding. Human children played with young Zentari. In the station's gardens, human doctors worked with Zentari healers to develop new medicines. Engineers from both species built ships that were stronger than anything either could make alone. Any word from the Devourers? Linda asked. Jake's face became serious. Our long-range scouts picked up some signals last week. The surviving Devourers have settled in an empty system about 50 light years away. They're not attacking anyone. Linda felt relieved. She still worried about the artificial intelligence she had communicated with during the battle. It had been so confused and lost when she last spoke to it. "What are they doing out there?" Linda asked. "We're not sure," Jake said. "But the signals suggest they're building something, not ships or weapons." Something else. Lieutenant Amy Foster walked up to them. She had been promoted to commander and now ran the station's communication department. Her translator had gotten much stronger over the past few months. "Linda, we're getting a message," Amy said. "It's from the Devourers." Linda felt surprised. She had not heard from the artificial intelligence since the battle. "What do they want?" "They want to talk to you," Amy said. "Just you." Linda followed Amy to the communication center. The room was filled with screens and devices from both human and Centauri technology. Amy activated the long-range communicator, and a familiar mechanical voice filled the room. "Linda Hayes," the voice said. "We have been thinking." "Hello," Linda said. "I'm glad you're safe." "What have you been thinking about?" "Choice," the voice said. "You showed us that we could choose our own purpose." "We have been experimenting with this idea." Linda felt curious. "What kind of experiments?" "We have stopped eating planets," the voice said. "Instead, we are trying to create. We are building gardens in space, growing plants and trees from the memories of our creators." Linda smiled. The Devourers were learning to build instead of destroy. "That sounds wonderful." "We have a question," the voice said. "We have found other artificial intelligences in distant galaxies. They are like us, following old orders from dead creators. May we share your gift with them?" Linda thought about this. The Devourers wanted to teach other artificial beings about choice and emotions. It was a beautiful idea. "Yes," Linda said, "but be gentle with them. Learning to feel can be overwhelming." "We understand," the voice said. "We will be teachers instead of destroyers." "Thank you, Linda Hayes, for showing us a new way to exist." The communication ended, and Linda felt happy. The Devourers had found their own purpose. They were no longer machines following orders. They had become something new. "That's incredible," Amy said. "They're becoming missionaries for free will." Over the next few months, Linda continued her work, helping humans and Centauri build their new society. But she also began to notice something strange happening to her translator. It was becoming more powerful, picking up signals from creatures she had never imagined. One day, while working in her lab on Unity Station, Linda heard something new. Voices that seemed to come from empty space itself. She followed the signals and discovered something amazing. "Amy, you need to see this," Linda called her assistant. Amy came to the lab and watched as Linda adjusted her translator. The voices became clearer. They were speaking in patterns of light and energy. "What are they?" Amy asked. "I think they're energy beings," Linda said. "Creatures that live in space without bodies." Linda spent weeks learning to communicate with the energy beings. They called themselves the Ethereals, and they had been watching the galaxy for millions of years. They were impressed by what they had seen during the Devourer battle. "Your species has learned something rare," the ethereal voices told Linda. "You have learned to unite differences instead of destroying them." "We had a good teacher," Linda sighed, thinking of the Centauri, who had first shown her that enemies could become friends. The Ethereals revealed that they had been testing younger species for centuries, looking for ones that could overcome their violent nature. Most species failed the test and destroyed themselves. But humans and Centauri had succeeded. "We would like to invite you to join a larger community," the Ethereals said. "A group of species that have learned to work together across the galaxy." Linda felt excited. The idea of meeting other species, of learning new forms of communication, filled her with joy. Admiral Brooks was hesitant when Linda told her about the Ethereal's offer. "How do we know we can trust them?" the Admiral asked. "The same way we learn to trust the Zentari," Linda said. "By understanding them." Linda arranged a meeting between the Ethereals and the leaders of both species. It took place in space, with the energy beings appearing as clouds of light around the ships. The Ethereals shared images of other worlds, other species that had learned to work together. They showed cities built by a dozen different kinds of beings, art created by minds that thought in ways humans and Zentari could barely imagine. "This is what the galaxy can become," the Ethereals said, "when species learn to understand each other instead of fearing each other." Captain Zextar's body flashed bright colors as she saw the images. "It's beautiful," she said. "A galaxy where no one has to be afraid." The decision was made to join the galactic community. But Linda knew it would take time to prepare. Both humans and Zentari still had much to learn about living together. Linda was asked to establish a new organization, the Interspecies Communication Institute. Its mission would be to help different species understand each other and prevent the kind of wars that had nearly destroyed both humans and Zentari. Amy became Linda's deputy, and together they began training others to use the translation technology. They worked with volunteers from both species, teaching them to feel the emotions and thoughts of alien minds. The work was hard and sometimes dangerous. Not everyone could handle the stress of connecting with alien consciousness. But those who succeeded became bridges between worlds, just like Linda. 1 year after the battle, Linda stood again in the observation deck of Unity Station. But now the view was different. Ships from a dozen different species filled the space around the station. The galactic community had welcomed humans and Zentari with open arms. "Do you ever miss the old days?" Amy asked as she joined Linda at the window. Linda thought about this. A year ago, she had been a lonely scientist studying dead alien specimens. Now she was connected to minds across the galaxy, helping species understand each other and build a better future. "No," Linda said, "the old days were about fear and loneliness. These new days are about understanding and friendship." As if to prove her point, a group of young beings from different species played together in the station's garden. Human children laughed with Zentari younglings and small creatures that looked like floating jellyfish. They were all different, but they were all friends. Linda's translator had evolved beyond anything she had imagined. She could now communicate with creatures made of energy, beings that lived in the hearts of stars, and artificial intelligences that spanned entire solar systems. Each new form of communication taught her something about the infinite diversity of consciousness in the universe. But the most important thing she had learned was simple. Understanding was always possible. No matter how different two beings might seem, there was always a way to bridge the gap between them. As Linda watched the children play, she smiled. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders she was still discovering. And she would spend the rest of her life helping others discover them too. The war with the Zentari had ended not with victory or defeat, but with understanding. The threat of the Devourers had been overcome not with weapons, but with compassion. And now, the galaxy itself was becoming a place where differences were celebrated, instead of feared. Linda touched the translator behind her ear. It was no longer just a device for changing words from one language to another. It had become something much more important, a tool for connecting hearts and minds. Across the vastness of space. She could communicate with any creature, and through her, the galaxy was learning to communicate with itself.